Welcome everybody, my name is François Letarte and this is my channel JDR D30, a channel about tabletop role-playing games. Today the subject is how I got into role-playing games. Among all the videos I watch on YouTube about role-playing games, one of my favorite kind is the how I got into role-playing games because that's very interesting. And it reminds me of my own starts in the hobby, and I can sense in the people's story about how they got into it that it's very kind of emotional, and there's a kind of nostalgia around that. And today this is my take on the subject. So how I got into gaming? Well, as a kid, like every other kids, I was playing with action figures like Star Wars, G.I. Joe, Transformers, and often I would mix every kind of action figures I would have and give new names to every one of them and create a new world with that. So you could have a Star Wars ship like the Snow Speeder piloted by a G.I. Joe figure, and fighting a transformer, and it was an all new world. I was also making that with Lego toys, where I've created with my brother a whole science fiction setting that was on the moon, and there were ultrasound driven ships. That was a big science fiction for a kid. And what else? Well, yeah, with my we kind of played cowboys and Indians with the friends all around the house we got the good weather outside. That was a good time because computers weren't around much. Computers were quite new and nobody really had them. So we played with our imagination. We played with toys. We played with woods or things from nature. Our imagination was working hard, and I'm really glad I was a kid in these times, and it was a good thing. Well, the only video games that were around were the Atari 2600 and the Coleco. I had those consoles, but there weren't role-playing games on that. These were just arcade games where there were big squares battling each others. So that was it. We kind of being bored rapidly with that, and that was a good thing because if I wanted to get to the real adventure, I had to play with toys, and a little later get into reading. And when I got 11, 12 years old, my games with toys were getting away gradually up until it was replaced by reading. And that was a time where game books were around. It was quite a new thing. The fighting fantasy game books, sorcery, Lone Wolf series, and I'm a French Canadian, and we had the French version of that was called Livre dont vous êtes le héros, which under that they regrouped the fighting fantasy, sorcery, Lone Wolf, and many other series, and I was a very big fan of that. For me, that was a real deal. That was a real adventure. You read that, and you had to choose what your hero would do, and the fight and all that. I was really into those books, especially the Lone Wolf series, which I am a big fan, because I don't know, it was kind of dramatic at the start. If you ever read Lone Wolf, the introduction of the game is that you are the last of the Kai Lords alive, because all the others were killed, and you were kind of a witness of that. So it started with big drama, and they got you into it. Every books were following each other, and it was really the sequel of the last one. You with game books, I really got into it. That was my first foot into role-playing games without knowing it, in fact, because I didn't know anything about role-playing games or Dungeons and Dragons. After that, some months later, the local library organized a big event around game books, and of course, I subscribed it because I wanted to share my love of game books with everybody. So that was a chance for me to do that. And when I got into this activity, uh, I, I was 13 at that time, and with the number of kids that were subscribed, they separated the group into every kids 12 years old and under were in one group, which they had an activity to create a game book. And I was 13, and they got me into an older group. In this older group, the oldest of this group, Nelson, one of my friends, still of my friend, was 18 at this time. And they've decided that they wanted to play role-playing games. They wanted to play Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. I didn't know anything about that, but that it caught my interest. And the session after, we created the characters, and for me it was quite a blast because I was used to a character sheet with only 3 stats on it, and it was the character sheet from Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. It was kind of 4 pages, but for me, I was fascinated by it. I had someone who helped me get my character, and well, didn't know what to choose at first, but well, I remember him to be an assassin, but a chaotic good assassin. Well, I didn't know how to play an assassin, and didn't know what chaotic good was, but that was it. And for me, I got back home, and we haven't played yet. We've just created the characters, and I was really excited about that. I didn't know what to expect. When I got to the next session, we started to play. So there was my friend Nelson, who was the game master, the dungeon master, and they started to tell us a story about a king who wanted us to get to another city. I don't quite remember the quest, but I remember that the king asked us to get to the other city to retrieve something, and I wasn't really participating, but I was watching everyone and the interaction, and it was quite refreshing to me. I remember that on this adventure, we got on the road, and there was some kind of a random encounter, and it was a millicentipede. I don't remember the name in English. In mille pattes géant, that what was the French name, and we had to fight that. And yeah, it was the first fight I ever got into, and well, it was quite memorable because it was just more than rolling dices. You had to say, okay, I hit me with my sword, I turn around the beast, and for me, once again, it was quite a shock for me. That's the only real thing I do remember from that first campaign I ever was into. I remember how excited I was, how new it was for me, how infinite it seemed. And one of my fellow players told me about the Dungeons and Dragons Red Box. Okay, made a cut. So that friend of mine told me that was in the group. told me about the Dungeons and Dragons Red Box, and yeah, there was a small gaming shop in my town. The town I come from, it's not that big of a town. It's not. I live not that far from Montreal, maybe 45 minutes in a car, but I live in a a small town, and there was one shop, and it was quite a strange shop. It was called Bouquinerie Frontenac, and it was in a whole house, just in the border of a river, and it was that kind of an old lady who was running that shop, and I got there with my father. My father knew about that shop because when he was younger, that's where he got his comics. He was a big comic book fan when he was a little kid, and that shop was there. But she still had the comics, and she had a small section with role playing games, and yeah, it was quite an eye an eye opener for me. I got my first red box, and I ran my first game the week after with some friends, my brother. The first character I got someone to roll, it was my brother who decided he was to be a fighter, and back then it was 3d6 all in a row, and the first stat was a strength, and he rolled just in front of me 18. So that was quite exciting. The first die roll for a character I witnessed as a game master was an 18, and he liked to play this character. And there was my brother, one of my neighbor, and two girls, two neighbors too. Yeah, and we had two girls and two guys, and that's how I started. That was my first campaign. It was the Cave of Chaos, which came with the box. The other Advanced Dungeons and Dragons campaign I was into, well, after 3 sessions it was out because nobody was showing except me, because I was so excited about it. So Nelson told me, oh, we'll drop it out. But that was okay, because on my side at home I began with Dungeons and Dragons, and that's where it started. So when I first think about that, there's some kind of nostalgia. One of the player girls well died last year, so when I knew that she died, it was quite sad, and it reminds me of the first female I had around the table, which was very good indeed. She only made the Caves of Chaos, and after that, she never got back. But she every time I saw her, and if it came on the subject, she always told me, yeah, that was fun, and she was the best player of that game. I quite remember. So yeah, I have a small thought for her. But that's where I got into gaming. And after that, I was really interested. In my high school, there was a club where I've discovered Marvel superheroes, and Twilight 2000, and the Car Wars. Well, Car Wars is not a role-playing game, but that was the real big deal. And that's where I got into gaming. So hoping that you enjoyed my little tale about how I get into gaming. And my name is François Letel. This is my channel, JDR D30. And I hope that you have as much fun in your game as in life. So see you next time.